Okay. Well, we're going to walk you through a short presentation, a little bit of information as Ms. Williams just shared. So we welcome you to this new format for us. Our theme this year is to know your impact and to create a culture of kindness. I hope that you're seeing that out in our community. Really want to take time to let our employees, especially our teachers, know the impact that they're making for all of our students. Just so you have a current bit of information, we're the 6th largest district in the state now. 79,000, it's about 600 students and 13,000 staff. 170 square miles, this makes us the largest employer in Fort Bend County. We have a lot of successes. I won't read them all, but you can see those are just some from last year that we've had at various schools, a lot of state champions, and we're really proud of those accomplishments. And we want to keep on providing these amazing things for our kids. We graduated 6,104 students last May. And just for the class of 22, want to make sure you know that they earned $198 million in scholarships. They have higher rates of attending college and their performance in college than do charters and many other districts. We have 94% graduation rate. And just recently, we learned 75 students in Fort Bend ISD are recognized as presidential scholars, and that's the National Merit Scholar Program. And that puts them in the top 1% of the nation. We have a lot of special programs. We're really focusing a lot on our little ones because we know it begins there. You can see some data, but just know that we've extended full-day pre-K across our district, so we make it an opportunity for many. We have programs of choice, and of course, one is right here at the Reese Center where we are today, and there's a welder that would be in that program located on the other part of this facility, but we have multiple program pathways, 9, I believe, here in the Reese Center, as well as P-TECH at 3 high schools, an early college high school, where our students can even earn associate's degrees. I learned this morning that we should have around 50 students that will walk out of high school with an associate's degree. So it's quite amazing. And then you can see the academies we offer. These are programs of choice throughout our district. 245 campus-based fine arts programs that begins in the elementary all the way through high school, and 18 organized sports. We really value leadership and teaching our students at a young age what it's like to be a leader so that they're prepared no matter what career path they choose. We have UIL, academics, AVID, robotics, history fairs, but we're really proud of our Leadership 101 and 102 program as well. Collaborative communities is a huge division within our district, very important as we partner with local religious organizations, businesses, individual mentors. We are really trying to bring our community into our schools to partner with us, especially post-COVID. But 13,000 students receive school supply kits, and to date, 7,700 students have been assisted through a variety of partnerships. We also are strong in our whole child health resources. We have special social workers, mental health counselors, and different wellness coalitions. And so we're very proud of that, and we want to continue those. So we're here today because we want to talk about a VATRE. And we know this is something brand new to our community. And so what is it? Well, there's the official definition. It's an election, and it's designed to generate additional revenue through our maintenance and operations tax rate. And so that's basically the tax rate that allows us to spend money on teachers, on compensation, on utilities, and things of that nature. We must go to the voters for that. And this is the first time Fort Bend's ever done it. So that's why it seems a little different. And if this were to pass, what are the main things? And we'll go into some detail in a moment, but we would add police officers to our elementary schools. We currently have them at the middle and high schools, but not at the elementary. We would add teacher and staff compensation because we know that we are in a teacher shortage nationwide. We know how important to pay competitively is. And we want to maintain a variety of programs of choice. You know, I just touched on a few, but there are so many in Fort Bend that our community values. Now I'll turn it over to Steve Bassett as we look at this, but I will add that as you look at the right-hand side of your screen, bond elections are what we're very familiar with in this community. We've been doing those every 3 to 4 years for a very long time to handle the growth. And that's where we think of the hard things, the buildings, the additions, the roofs, the chillers, the HVAC systems. And that's what our community is very accustomed to, and that affects the debt fund. And now I'll turn it over to Steve to transition onto the left side of your screen, which is the VATRE.
Morning, everybody. So we have 2 tax rates. Unlike cities or counties, which have one tax rate, we have two tax rates. We have a tax rate that handles the debt side, as Dr. Whitbeck was mentioning, but we also have a larger uh, tax rate for our general fund. And so our general fund is what's used to pay for the fuel. You see the graphics there, paychecks for everybody, utilities, textbooks, and everything else outside of the bond. So we have two large funds. You got the maintenance and operations, you got interest and seeking. Both of those can be helped through an election. Everybody's used to seeing bond elections, and we had one in 2014, we had one in 2018. We're not doing a bond election now, okay? That's going to be proposed in the future, but we are focusing on the blue side, the maintenance and operation, and so that's happening this November. All right, two different funds, two elections. Okay, we have not had to ask for a VATRE until now, and so you can see what we're trying to do is, fund the safety enhancements and maintain a competitive compensation package and the programs of choice. We've been able to add things over the years without having a VATRE, and we were talking about this actually with the board as early as 2016. And so since it's important to realize that while this is a first for our district, other districts across the state have done this before. Since 2006, more than 75% of the districts have had this kind of election. Matter of fact, KDISD is having an election right now, same kind of setup, same situation. This is not the club that we've been trying to join. We've been trying to put this off, but we finally got to the point where this is our time, and this is something that we really feel like we truly need. Okay, one of the big drivers that we're talking about here is being able to maintain a competitive compensation package. If you look at the 21-22 school year, our line is in red, and you can see after we gave a 4% raise and a double step for the teachers, we're very competitive with the districts around us, especially, Lamar and Cy-Fair. And then you have Katy and Houston ISD in the lines below us. So fast forward a year to what we're in now. You may have heard Houston ISD gave an 11% raise. So basically they lapped everybody. So the blue line, they went from close to the bottom up to the top. Katy ISD didn't want to be left behind. So they gave a bigger raise than usual. And so now they're in the mix with everybody there. But you can see our starting pay is on the low end compared to these districts around us, including Cy-Fair. And so, that's not where we want to be. We want to be among the leaders and definitely not lagging on any of these. So we definitely need help to be able to be competitive from a teacher compensation perspective. So what's kind of the rest of the story on this? Why is this really needed? There's a lot going on with the state that I think people need to really understand. So as a public school district, it's our mission to educate all kids. And we want to do that. And that's why we're here. That's what we believe in. And so we're going to take on all kids. And so we have kids with special needs. And so over the years, the percentage of children that have special needs, that's been growing. So that's another story, but that's been growing. We actually have 12% of our students now have special needs. As recently as 2016, it was only 6.4%. So anyway, what we have here is a disconnect between the additional revenue that we get from the state and the costs for educating these students. And so if you look at the average amount of revenue that we have per student versus the average amount of costs that we incur for special ed students, and we do get more funding from the state for these students, but there's a disconnect to the tune of $4,100. And we have over 8,000 students, actually it's approaching 9,000 special ed students. And so that disconnect, if you multiply 4,100 times the number of students we have a loss of $36 million. Okay, and so that's definitely hurting us. One of the reasons why we're in the financial situation that we're in. Other state funding sources have been cut. The instructional materials allotment, which has limited our ability to have textbooks in a lot of places. Also, though, you look at the state funding per student, that basic allotment has not changed since 2019. And so we've done 4 budgets since that time with the same basic allotment, and there hasn't been any kind of adjustment for inflation. So think about inflation, how inflation's impacted your household. We have buses that go all over the district, and a lot of, thousands and thousands of our kids ride buses every day. If you took all of those bus routes and you drove them all, it would actually be the circumference of the earth every day. So when you think about the inflation for fuel, that's impacted our district to the tune of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So also the state is mandating that we're reducing our tax rate, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. So here's one of the biggest issues when I've seen a lot of questions on this over the years. And so our average property value through the district is 15%. Okay. And this is the highest I've seen since I've been involved with the district. And I've looked all the way back to 2000. I think some year ago it was as high as 12%, but this blows everything away. 15% value growth throughout the state. So how much do you think of that is actually being received by the general fund? How much of that are we benefiting from? So I'll save the suspense, but it's really zero, okay? The state simply pays us less as we collect more property taxes from our stakeholders, our taxpayers, okay? And how is it? How does that work? So people, whenever they see their appraised value and they see this big amount that it may go up, they think about, okay, well, where's this money going? I mean, surely the school district is just getting a windfall and they have no financial issues. That's just simply not the way it works, unfortunately. So I recently moved back to the district to join Dr. Whitbeck's team. I live in Sugar Creek, and my property value went up. And if I pay $1,000 more, okay, the state is actually going to pay us exactly $1,000 less, dollar for a dollar. Okay, our revenue is determined by enrollment and our attendance, and also by our tax rate. And if none of those change year over year, we could have growth of 5%, 15% like we have, or growth of 20%. And we are not getting more money from the state. We actually get less. Our overall revenue stays the same. So all of that money that we're collecting, and we are collecting it, we get it back from the county after our taxpayers write out those checks. The state is paying us dollar for dollar less, and that can be very frustrating for people when they hear about this arrangement. So you may have heard during the open houses and such that we had a $47 million deficit in the year that we're in. But so how do you close a shortfall like that? So there's two ways of looking at it. You got to reduce your budgets, and you got to look for new revenue. So the revenue part is where the VATRE comes in. But we've made some significant reductions on the budget side already, and we're planning for more. So going into the 22-23 year, we've already reduced our budgets by $15.4 million. This includes a lot of positions in central office, assistant superintendent, 2 assistant superintendents. You got an executive director. You got a couple directors. You got program directors. A lot of central office positions. $15.4 million has been cut already, and so we've also committed to our taxpayers that we're going to have further reductions of $22.9 million, whether or not we have a successful VATRE. We've committed to have further reductions. Here's an example of some of the positions that have been cut. I think I got ahead of myself and went into these, but these are some of the positions, and this is just through June 30th. The executive team meets every Monday morning to talk about all of the non-campus positions that have been recently opened. And so when those positions come open, we take a look at those. And we're talking about non-campus positions. The campus positions, we're filling them. But the non-campus positions we're looking at, and we're trying to determine whether or not each one of them is something that we can do without. And so we've made many, many cuts. So what does $22.9 million in reductions look like? So 88% of our budget is people. So our biggest expenses are people, our salaries and benefits. And then the third is utilities. So 88% is salaries and benefits. So it's hard to get to reductions of this amount of size without looking at reducing staff, okay? But how's that going to happen? So based on the average salary for our employees and their benefits, it's going to take 350 fewer positions to reach a target of 22.9 million. You may say that's a big number, and it is a big number. But with a district our size, we actually turn over more than 1,300 employees every year. And we've been doing this since 2014, 2015. And so all we have to do literally is just hire fewer people, okay? I've asked staff whenever I've been at campuses, were you here whenever there was a RIF back in 2011? And there was a layoff back then. That's not the way we're handling this. We're going to be able to handle this through attrition simply by hiring fewer people.
Steve, let me jump in with a quick
Sure.
clarification. So you said every year we're losing about 1,300 people, but is that normal for an organization of this size?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because early on, one of those first slides, it showed that we have over 13,000 employees. And so our turnover rate's between 10 and 12%, similar to all the districts around us. So all districts lose that many folks every year. So ours is very similar. So, but when you're losing that many employees, all you really have to do is just slow down your hiring and hire fewer people, and we'll be able to reach this target. Now, How does that happen? It's not going to be easy. We're looking at all the programs that we have, and we have to make judgment calls on whether or not we're getting bang for our buck. So all the things we've implemented over the years. We also have to actually talk about school consolidation. This is an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, but it's something that we have to look at because we've had the neighborhood school concept for decades. And I think that's a great concept, but when you have so many of the campuses that are underutilized, it makes it very difficult for us to compete with districts like Katy and Cy-Fair, where their average school size is so much higher. Our cost per student is just really much higher than theirs, so it makes it tough. So we're having to look at that, and that's something we're looking at for the coming year. All right, so that's reductions, and so we don't have to have an election to reduce our budget, but we do have to have an election to sustain the tax rate. And so our tax rate that we're asking to sustain is $1.21. That's the same as it was last year. I'll explain that a little bit more, but you have the M&O rate at 94 pennies, that's been proposed, and the debt service rate is 27 pennies. So our overall tax rate is $1.21. Here's a history recently of where our tax rate has been. And so you can see that we had a reduction in 2020, 2019, 2018, you can see we went from $1.34 to $1.32. As recently as 2019, we were 11 pennies higher than we are now. So the tax rate has come down over the years. Now, the $1.21 tax rate, how does that compare? Well, get to that slide in a second. Sorry about that. But one of the questions we get a lot about is, okay, please explain to me, why is an election needed if you're at $1.21 now or the year before, and that's what you're proposing? So this is the reason why. So here's the math. It's simple, but it's complex in a way. So because of that 15% value growth, the state is mandating that we further reduce our tax rate by 5.5 pennies. Okay, so that's a decision that's been made by the state, and so they're saying that we have to reduce that. Now, because of the property value growth that we've had, and we do benefit from that, not on the general fund side, as I explained, but it does help us on the debt fund. Because we're benefiting from that, we think we can also reduce our tax rate by 2 pennies. And so that's what we're doing there. The district made that decision. Now, what we're asking our voters is to help decide whether or not we're going to be able to retain that tax rate, retain those 7.5 pennies. And so if that's the case, then we would still come back to the $1.21. And so that's how we get there from $1.21 to $1.21. How does our tax rate compare to other districts around us? I've shown a slide in the past with 30-something districts in the area. This is a little bit easier to see, but we are on the lower end compared to the districts around us. Houston ISD is at $1.09. We're never going to have a tax rate as low as theirs with their industrial complex and skyscrapers. But A-Leaf is right next to us. They're a penny lower than us, which I think is interesting because we have a very active bond program because we've been growing over the years, and they don't. If you look at Lamar, they're at $1.24, 3 pennies higher than us. And I expect their rate to go up. I'm not sure how many pennies because they're taking to their voters in November a $1.7 billion bond. So I think that's going to go up. So I'll skip Cy-Fair. Look at Katy. So our friends at Katy, they're at $1.35, 14 pennies higher than us. And they're going through the exact same election that we are. And so if they're successful in their election, we're successful in our election, there will still be a 14-penny gap between the two districts. So I do believe our taxpayers are getting good value from a tax rate perspective in our district. Okay, so here's the hard part. We don't want people to be surprised when they go into the voting booth and they see what the proposition is. There's only one proposition. We're not having a bond election. It's all about the VATRE. And so if you look at this, ratifying the ad valorem tax rate of $1.21, I think we lose a lot of people just from that. It means, what does that mean? Basically, it's to ratify a property tax rate, okay, of $1.21. And this is the language that the legislature prescribes for us. We don't have any input as to what it is. And so when I look at this, it can be pretty confusing. I can see the $47 million, and that's true. That's what the impact is to the general fund. $46 million. But when I look at this, I think that it means an increase of our tax rate of $1.21, and it doesn't even tell us what the money's going to be used for. And so, we're kind of behind the 8 ball when people get in and they look at this. So we want to make sure you're not surprised when you see what this proposition language is. But here's what we think it means. All right. So a vote for will keep the same tax rate of $1.21. So same tax rate. It's not an increase in the tax rate. It will increase district revenue by $47.6 million. We're not trying to, hide that. I mean, full transparency. But more importantly, what is it being used for? It's going to be used to fund teacher and staff compensation, additional police officers, especially at the elementary schools, and other operational needs identified by the school board. So here's some of those investments. We do want to hire officers at each campus. So we need them at the elementary. We don't have them now, so that's $4 million. We need to immediately increase the teacher pay scale by 500 to bring our starting pay up to 60,000, and all the teachers across the district would have the additional 500. Our lowest paid employees, auxiliary and paraprofessional staff, they were given raises of 2 or 3%, and so we want to bring them to the full 5% for the current year, 2.2 million. Our health fund, we have thousands and thousands of employees in our health fund. We're self-insured. And we've already committed to them that we're not increasing premiums this year. Matter of fact, we're getting into open enrollment. And so in order to maintain that, though, we need to be able to move money from the general fund into the health fund. And we also have a longevity pay program that will benefit all of our employees. That is something that we really feel is important. But we don't want to just benefit all employees. We really want to reward the employees that have been with the district for a long time. And we want to implement something that rewards loyalty and retention. Let me just back up real quick. So this slide, something I just want to add, because this adds up to 15.2 million, and we just saw that the additional revenue we get is 47 million. So one of the questions we got from a recent person whenever we were presenting, they said, okay, well, so that leaves 32 million. What are you doing to that 32 million? Is that 32 million a slush fund that you have? And well, the answer is no. The 32 million is what we need to help cover some of the commitments we've been making in the past in terms of opening the schools that need to be open next year, in terms of addressing the textbook funding that we've lost for the 14.3 million that we've lost, and also that huge gap we have on special education. We need help being able to cover that gap, and so that's where that additional funds are going to be going. So, important dates to know. Early voting starts on the 24th. If you haven't registered, we've missed out on that, but early voting is next Monday. And of course, election day is November 8th.
Thank you both.
Do you want to?
Ready for questions?
I think we are. We
Yeah,
had
I
some
think
other
we're
stuff
ready.
on here, but
That's
yeah.
I know you're ready, because you've heard this one before, but it's fair. It's a fair question. A lot of people feel this way. This question says, my family is already struggling to pay our monthly bills, so why do you need this money? And when I hear this question, it sounds like, look, I'm hurting over here. You tell me you're hurting. Why should I help you?
Well, I'll address that one. I think that it is somewhat of a community concept of strong schools, strong community. It affects your property values. It affects the education that we deliver. So kind of what comes around goes around, so to speak. I would say that I think when Mr. Bassett outlined a lot of those things that we're going to use it for, you saw that for the officers, for compensation, for it's $8.8 million for us to open the new schools next year, and that's an ongoing yearly expense to operate them. And then we have things like making up the gap for SPED. We have a lot of expenditures. So technology funds have also been cut by the state, so we've got to fill that gap in. But we need to have our budget solid for going into the 23 planning, because the little bit of compensation that we want to give our employees in November, should this pass, we want to be able to have a strong compensation package for the 23-24 school year for all of our teachers. And I want to say teachers specifically because we're in a teacher shortage like nothing I've seen in my career. And so we're all kind of scrambling for the same people, especially in the area of special ed. So we have to remain competitive in order to retain, and to attract high quality staff.
And then just a little bit more on that, Dr. Wibbeck. Why does it matter to people who live in this community that we have a top-notch school district?
Well, because there's a desirability in Fort Bend to live here because of the schools, to be a part of this community. I talk to people all over the place who tell me this is why they moved here, for our schools. I mean, we have very top-rated schools. 84% of our campuses just earned A's and B's. And so we have a strong community, strong schools. So in order to maintain that, though, we need to be able to have great instruction in the classroom. And so that involves those that support the classroom as well as that direct teacher.
Okay, another question. Unless you had anything to add?
Nope.
All right. Next question. For the 22.9 million reduction, what programs will be abandoned? Someone wants to know.
Well, we haven't decided yet. So we actually have design teams we have the executive team works on it, but also a lot of directors and the executive directors and some of the coordinators are meeting on a regular basis, looking at ways to reduce our budgets. And so we actually informed the board last night that we're hoping to have a report for them by the middle of next month on some of the things that they've been working on. But we are really turning over every stone. We're looking at everything that's been implemented, all the ways that we're spending money. And again, as I mentioned, we're looking at every open position that's non-campus based and making decisions every week on whether or not we're going to fill those positions. And we're leaving a lot of positions vacant.
Let me just add, this man works in his office alone and doesn't even have an admin, which he needs. He's not getting one. So the front of his office, there's an empty desk, and there's Steve working away.
And we just did not fill one at the superintendent board level as well. We did. So we're all doing our part to pick up more slack. I would also say that when it comes to what programs, I want to be fully honest and transparent. We could probably hurry up and do that work, but should this pass, we've committed to cutting 23.9. Should this not pass, we will have to cut 47. There's a big difference because remember, we've already cut 15.3. So we've already taken some off, especially at the top of the organization. So now, what would that be? What does that look like? And the last thing we want to do is to pit programs against programs. So if we were to say it's going to be this, 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 and that, then people that are in those programs or their children are going to be very upset, rally together, fight against it. And then people that are like, it's not listed, they're going to be like, whoo, I don't need to worry. But that's not how we need to operate. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Is it 23 or is it 47? And in the meantime, in the background, we're making decisions. It also includes, Sherry, contracts. So we've got a contract coming before the board that we've renegotiated and we're saving $1 million. So we're doing a lot behind the scenes in the business side of things that don't necessarily affect the children, which is a good thing. And but I'm not stepping out and saying it's going to be this or that, because I think that's not fair to those that lead programs and to our kids that are in them.
Okay. This viewer says, last night at the board meeting, it was stated $36.1 million will go to special education. How exactly will that money be spent? You want to clear that up?
Well, so what the 36.1 million is actually the ongoing deficit that we're carrying in terms of the difference between state funding and special ed funding. Okay.
It's not what
well, it's
what
right.
the hole we're in.
Right. So we're already spending that money. We added 27 special ed teachers to the budget this year because of the growth in special ed students, and so this isn't additional money going towards special ed. This is spending that's already there. Okay. And so we have a budget deficit, and so we're going to be using some of these funds to address that budget deficit.
Okay. We also do pay special education teachers more. They receive additional stipends, and then so that is also factored into the budget each year. And we always want to look at that too to see, are we competitive in that area? Some districts are doing sign-on bonuses for special ed teachers, and I think we added that just this year. So we're trying to look at that as well.
Highly specialized areas. So
yes.
This viewer wants to know, they asked, are we working toward making central admin leaner as part of potential budget cuts? You've kind of gone over this, but I want to honor everybody's question. Can you elaborate at all on where central admin cuts can and may be made? I already said Steve doesn't have an executive assistant, so.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I reminded all the leadership in the meeting we just had is that we want to definitely document all of the things that we're doing that need automation. There's still a lot of manual processes that we have, and we need to be on a seek and destroy mission to drop every one of those so that everybody can work more efficiently. Because if everybody can work more efficiently, we can have less people and actually still get better service to our internal stakeholders, but also more importantly, it's easier for the parents to deal with us and whatever else. And so we're trying to automate as much as possible, but that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. We actually also have kind of an archaic system. Our HR system and our finance system was actually implemented in 2008. And so we really need to reconfigure that system. And so we're starting that work, but that doesn't happen overnight. But we do believe that when we do re-implement that, we'll be able to save many positions.
This is a little off the topic, but someone wrote in, they want to know, are the fine arts programs considered programs of choice? Can you provide clarity as to what programs of choice may be cut? So it's actually within the lanes of the topic. And you kind of covered this, but again, I want to honor every
Sure.
question submitted.
Well, and I think our slide showed that we have 245 fine arts programs, and that's a lot. That is definitely a lot. 18 athletic sports. So again, this goes back to, if we pick and choose which ones, then we're going to create anxiety that perhaps we don't need to create. Again, are we talking about 23 million if this passes, or are we talking about 47 million? So when I look at 23 million, and I know I can do a contract negotiation for something that's unrelated to instruction, save $1 million. I can continue to look at central office. I can continue to look at being leaner. That's one thing in a $780 million budget. 47 million is where I think you will see some of those things. And so, but I'm not going to sit and name them, because honestly, we aren't going through that exercise yet. But it would be in a fair and equitable way. How many children are involved, for example, as opposed to, are hundreds and thousands of children involved? Are just a few children involved? What is the cost per child? What is the benefit perceived by the user? There's a lot of ways in which you can look at programs to abandon, and we would be strategic in doing that. It wouldn't just be willy-nilly, or because we like one or don't like one. It would be very strategic.
Either way this election goes, it sounds like a lot of work is ahead.
A lot of work is ahead.
Okay, here's a question that this viewer asked: how are you going to recruit additional police officers when your police chief stated in a presentation at a recent board meeting that it's already hard to find qualified candidates to join our police department?
I can answer that one. I work very closely with Chief Ryder. He reports directly to me. First of all, we're very lucky to have an individual with his integrity and his commitment to this district. His family's here, is very, very committed. And he did give that presentation, and he did talk honestly and openly about how difficult it is to find officers. And in that same presentation, we had parents who spoke, and they spoke about wanting officers at the elementary schools. Well, that did not fall on deaf ears, not with Chief, not with any of us. And so as we have planned out the VATRE, we've been listening. And that was one area that we listened. So that doesn't make it any easier. But what Chief is doing is he's spending time working with different agencies. So for example, Sherry, there are roadblocks in hiring retirees from city police departments, county police departments. And so there are ways in which perhaps agreements can be made, things can be done to make that easier. What we're already learning is that we believe there's a niche for certain people, especially retired officers, who would want to work at elementary schools, have those kind of hours, perhaps not be the same people that are out working the Friday night football game. So we believe there's a niche for certain officers, and he is deep diving into that, because of course our hope is that this passes and that we're able to move in that direction. And so we're preparing and getting ready.
And on that note, he's at a conference right now.
He is. Hopefully he's talking to folks. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Next viewer wants to know, well, it's kind of more of a statement. They say, I would support this if the money was going toward improvements at my child's campus. Why isn't that included in this proposal? I know you covered it, Steve, but speak to that.
So whenever we do a bond election, we put out information out there exactly what's being planned and being spent at every campus. Okay, and that's out there, and you can see on our websites, what we've done for both 2014 and 2018. And so this is a bit different because this is for district wide. I mean, all of our employees are treated the same district wide. I think the most tangible things, if your child is at an elementary school, I guess the biggest difference is that, if we're successful in expanding the labor pool, as Dr. Whitbeck mentioned, and we're able to bring in some officers that want a school calendar, want to be off during the summers or whatever else. I mean, we do believe that and we've heard from some that they're interested in doing that, then they'll see an officer at their campus that's not there now. So that is something tangible.
And I would say that whatever level your child is at, because there is a shortage in that market and because of the work he's doing. We also know that we're again looking at having the money we need for the 23-24 budget. And so that involves compensation across the board. So when we retain high quality teachers, when we retain the police officers that are at our middle schools and high schools, we know that we've got to look at their salaries. I'll be quite honest. We're about 7th out of 10th on police officer salaries. So we've got to do something with that. So all of that is combined to say to you at whatever school you're at, that would benefit your campus, as would maintaining a lot of these programs that children are gravitating to and that our community is gravitating to when they are locating in the Houston area.
Good point. But this is not a bond election. That may be down the road though, right?
Correct.
Okay. Isn't the district receiving more money from the increase in home values in recent years? So why do you need this money?
Yeah, so we
Answer
are.
that enough, probably.
We are collecting more. I mean, people are writing checks for larger dollar amounts to the county, and the county does send us that money. They send us that money our way, but the state simply pays us exactly dollar for dollar less. And so we're not benefiting from it. The state is benefiting from it. As a matter of fact, the state has a surplus in their rainy day fund of over $29 billion. That's with a B. And our state funding, for comparing state funding for schools compared to the other 50 states, we're in the 40s. I've seen it somewhere we're ranked 48th. I've seen it ranked 40th or 41st. There's a lot of different ways to measure that. We're in the 40s somewhere. It's in the 40s somewhere, and I don't think that's where we want to be. But the state hasn't adjusted those numbers, and the state really is benefiting from the increases in property values, and the school districts simply are not.
And then Steve, because you're a finance guy, the other side of that maybe is that your property values go up, and if you ever want to sell, that's good, and having a good school district is all part of that.
Sure. I mean, there are some people out there thinking about selling their homes, and others that are here and they want to stay here for a long, long time, which is great. Okay. But certainly whenever you do decide to make that decision to sell your home, you want the property value to be high. And definitely there's a correlation between the quality of a school district and the value of the properties.
And then in case either of you know, has the state indicated if they might give schools some of that windfall?
There's been no indication yet that we're hearing. I've attended a superintendent meeting as recently as last week. We're connected to many organizations that give us our school board as well as superintendents and principals and all. As of right now, I know I've received no word that we can count on any one thing. And so I think this is why I think right now we need to solve this problem within our own community. And then if there is changes that come our way, then that's great. We'll be able to enhance even more. We'll be able to look at how we can take care of our people. But I think when Steve mentioned the $29 billion surplus, I want to put that in perspective. It was not very many legislative sessions ago, I'm going to say 2 or 3, when the rainy day fund was $11 billion. And everyone was wondering, what in the world are they going to do with all that money? And now it's $29 billion. So I want to just have you put that in perspective, because if the districts were benefiting and keeping that money that was coming in the door, then why would there be $29 billion there? There wouldn't be. We would be sitting here. We wouldn't be having this election. We would have all the money we need to serve the special ed children, to compensate our employees, and we wouldn't be in this situation. So I think the numbers speak for themselves in that regard. And so I really do, I suggest that people really inspect that data.
This is a broad question, and maybe break it down into big chunks. How will the district use the money? You say if this election passes, the district will benefit by the tune of $47 million. How will you use that money?
Well, as we outlined, we need to make some immediate increases in compensation. Okay, teacher and staff compensation. You got the $4 million for the police officers. So we're very specific on the $15.2 million in terms of new investments that are going to be made, including the implementation of the longevity pay program, which we hope helps us retain teachers and staff for the long haul. The additional amount is frankly what we need to just meet to continue to fund the commitments that we've already made with regard to the special ed, helping us with that gap, that funding gap that we have, the instructional materials allotment, that funding gap that we have, the opening of schools that are slated to open in August, and we have some schools that are definitely overcrowded. And so those are some of the commitments we've been making. We need the funds to help with those things.
Can you break down, if this passes, what it might do to a homeowner's tax bill? And if it fails, what it may do to a homeowner's tax bill?
So because the tax rate is staying the same, okay, if it passes, the tax rate will stay the same. You probably had property value growth. Now that property value growth, if you're a homeowner, is going to be limited to 10%. Okay, so you'll probably be paying 10% more because because your value went up. Not because we're changing the tax rate, because we're not changing the tax rate because the value went up. So we want to be very clear about that. This is a sustaining the rate. We're not increasing the rate. But in all honesty, I mean, you saw that slide before. If the TRE goes, if it fails, people would be able to enjoy a 7.5 penny decrease in their tax rate. Okay, which is great. I mean, I like lower taxes. I'm a taxpayer in the district, but that is going to put the district in a very difficult situation in terms of being competitive with teachers, teacher pay, and whatever else, and addressing some of the things that we've been talking about here.
And that whole security component that
Exactly.
Elementary schools. And are we talking about a lot of money? I mean, if it goes either way, what does that look like over the course of the year?
Right. And so I was if you just look at the growth for our average home, it's based on $100,000 is about $6 a month. Okay, so a $300,000 home, which is our average home, that's about $18 per month. And so you multiply that, I think, by 12, I think it's $216. I think if my math is right, so it's about $216 for our average taxpayer for that difference in the 7.5 pennies.
I think I want to add on this though, that we showed you a chart of where the tax rate has gone recently. And so just within the last 3 years, the tax rate has dropped 11 cents. And so basically by voting for this, you're saying, okay, $1.21, I was paying $1.34 just a few years ago. Before that, we were paying even more. I remember when I lived in Katy, at one time, my tax rate was $1.56. All right, so the tax rates have been coming down, partly because they've been mandated, but they've been coming down. So what this is asking is that by voting for this, you keep it at $1.21. If you vote against this, we go down to $1.13. And what we're saying is that's going to be extremely difficult to operate. That's a lot less than what Fort Bend has traditionally been able to be funded.
Vis-a-vis, it's not going to be a windfall for you. It's not like if it goes down, your tax bill will be cut by thousands. We're talking $20 or so a month.
Right.
Okay. All right. Final question. If this passes, will there be accountability to the entire community on the goals of the VATRE?
Well, I would like to say that I hope that in the year I've been here and Mr. Bassett has joined me back from being the former CFO when I used to be the deputy. So as a reminder, I was here 2013 to 17 as deputy superintendent. I think that we have been placing things in the boardroom very publicly, very transparently. Our board has adopted goals that are specific to teaching and learning, to retaining high quality staff, to safety measures. They're very specific. Our campuses and our departments are responding to that by having specific goals. So my answer to you is yes, we will be very clear. As a matter of fact, one of the first things we're going to be doing is talking about that $23 million. And we're going to start that in November because we know that's got to happen no matter what. And so you will see that, and you will see open and honest conversation just like we're having right now. And we're always going to welcome that. I think one thing that we may not always make decisions everyone likes, but I would hope that our reputations precede us and people of integrity.
Yeah, if I can add just, this is the 5th district I've been in, and our administration is way more collaborative in terms of working with the community and getting feedback, but then also transparent in terms of just being open in comparison to the other districts I've been in. And we were that way before when the two of us were working here together before, and we're certainly going to be that way again. So it's not our intent to surprise anybody or anything along those lines, but we're going to be putting information out there, and then also we have to be able to earn the trust of our electorate all of everybody, that's looking at this, we need to be able to entrust because we are going to have a bond election next year probably. Okay. And so, you could just turn that one off and put it aside. We wouldn't have a chance for it if we're not going to be open and honest about how all this is going to play out. And so that's going to be coming. And so, we're basically, in a school district or whatever else, I mean, because there's elections that are going to be coming, we're in election mode every day. I mean, we're working very hard to be transparent and to serve our kids best we can.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you, everybody who sent in questions. We appreciate that. Thank you for watching. This week, final 3 feeder pattern VATRE info sessions are taking place. There's one tonight at Clements High School. There's one tomorrow at George Bush High School, and there's one Thursday at Ridge Point High School. All the meetings start at 6:30, generally wrap up at 7:30. If you want to see these folks in person, that's a great opportunity to do that along with other leadership in the district. Thank you for watching, taking the time out to submit those questions, taking the time out to get informed. Please vote on November 8th. The VATRE is on the ballot as Proposition A, and it's all the way down. So don't stop voting until you get to the very end of the ballot. All right. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.